Welcome everyone to Press Start. My name is Jeremy Culver, aka Darsay.
And I am Gloria, aka Kairu.
And welcome back to another episode of The Rift. I know we took some time off for the Thanksgiving holiday and a little bit of vacation that Kyle and I ended up meeting up for. But now we are back, and we last left off with free agency just about to start. Well, free agency was in full swing, and the LCS rosters are now at least reportedly finalized. Not all the teams have announced the official rosters, but that is all things that we're talking about today, all things LCS. But before we get into all of that, as always, Kyle, how you been?
Oh, not too bad. As you said, we had some time together, which was a lot of fun, of course. And I'm stoked that the LCS rosters has officially finished. Thanksgiving, of course, was good for any of you that celebrated here, and overall it wasn't too bad. Wasn't too bad at all.
Well, that's good to hear. I know that I definitely had a fairly good time on Thanksgiving. Definitely a really good meals, and we've just finally finished up our meals. That was cooked. So. That was nice to have a lot of good cooked food for a while, which is typical of Thanksgiving. But speaking of good things that come out of Thanksgiving, I will say that there was a lot of news that took place over that Thanksgiving week, and some news that maybe you were happy about, maybe you weren't happy about. I know for myself, some news I was happy about, some news I wasn't so happy about. So we have a lot to get into. So Kyle, let's kind of start from the top, which is always of the free agency moves that were made in the LCS. What was the biggest news to you?
I think the biggest news and one of the better moves, which I would have to say is Crown going to CLG. I believe that is pretty big for CLG, with Crown coming over to a better team to show hopefully show more consistency, because with the team that he had to carry completely on his back, it's hard to show that consistency throughout the year, and he had a really good split. So him going over to CLG, matching him with Song and Ruin, I think that's a huge move for CLG, and if Wiggly and Crown could get off to a hot start, that move could definitely be one of the biggest and best moves of the offseason.
I will completely agree with when it comes to the overhaul of a roster or the upbringing of a roster from last split, the summer split, into the upcoming spring split. I personally do think CLG's moves made the biggest jump from where they were to where they're going to be, or at least on paper where they're going to be. You already know I'm a huge fan of Crown. We talked about it in the last episode, yes, and where I thought he would go, and the fact that, Optic, or now Immortals, not keeping him kind of like caught me off guard because of how well he played. That I said that just means he has to be getting a good deal somewhere else, and obviously that deal seems to be at CLG. And I think pairing him up with some of these guys like Ruin, who we know in the past has been able to carry games and get things going in the top lane, not so often on his previous team, but he is able to do that. And Stixay, of course, we know is a very high ceiling, high reward type ADC who maybe takes risks too much. That doesn't make him so consistent, but he can be that way. If you can draw some attention away from those guys where they can maybe step up, then that team can become better. And with Crown there, I think he is kind of, in my opinion, the right person to be able to draw attention away and basically bring the best out of all three of those guys. Song, a really good support. Wiggly, really good in the spring split. Last split, not so good. So we'll see, though, that if this new roster and where people are at, if that will allow Wiggly to get back to where he was in the spring split and to the potential that at least CLG sees with him. That'll be some of the things that I think are important out of that team. Kyle, just real quick before I get into mine is when you look at that CLG roster, who do you think is going to be, I guess, the biggest focus on it? Will it be Crown? Will it be Ruin? Or will it be Stixay?
I want to say you're bringing in Crown to focus around Crown personally. I feel Crown. I think a lot of it actually would be a pretty topside heavy. I think Wiggly will go between Ruin and Crown. I think it's be, as I said, topside heavy. But again, with the preseason patch that has previously come out, with the new dragon buffs and everything else, and how it changes the environments and everything, there's going to be a lot of focus down bot lane as well. Even playing the few games that I've had over preseason, it's been constant 4-man bottoms. Like, I mean, mid, jungle, both creeping down bot to try to get that advantage and everything. So it'll be really interesting to see how that ends up playing out. But as you stated, Ruin has shown potential to carry himself. And then you add Crown to that can carry as well. And just let Stixay and Smoothie do their thing bot lane. Let Stixay farm up, especially if Caitlyn's really good in this patch, because his Caitlyn's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. That I think for the most part though, be pretty topside towards Crown.
Yeah, that's definitely a good thought there. For myself, though, when it comes to the biggest news, and I'm sure it's no surprise to you, it definitely is the move from Xmithie to Broxa with Team Liquid. Of course, I see that as the biggest move just because Team Liquid, repeat champions, and you go to Worlds. Obviously, we didn't have the showing at Worlds that Team Liquid would hope for, but you knew that some change was going to happen, and of course, it was rumored it was going to be Xmithie. To then be able to actually follow through with that and get, Broxa in that process is huge. And I was comparing some of the numbers from the most recent splits, so summer 2019 between Broxa and Xmithie, and there were some things that definitely made me a little bit happier about the move, but there are some things, though, that still made me a little worried. Just, again, from a head-to-head comparison, one of the things that made me a little worried is just the KDA between Xmithie and Broxa. Xmithie's KDA is a 6.4, with Broxa's being a 3.8. Now, that's depending on what you're looking at, that could be not so big of a deal. That could be a big deal. For me, I look at it as that's kind of a big deal. The other thing that also makes me a little worried is just Xmithie. We talked about it before about how he's kind of always been that solid jungler who knows where to go, knows where to be when his team needs them. And that shows in his kill participation, sitting at a 71.4, where Broxa, while he has the big play potentials, he doesn't always seem to be in the right place at the right time like Xmithie does, and that also shows in his kill participation, which is a 62.6. So you go from a guy who, at least based off of those stats, gets a little bit more kills, is a little bit more involved in the kill participation, to someone with a lower KDA and a lower kill participation. But we also talked about, which is where the good things come out, is that sometimes Xmithie can seem to be a little passive and can seem to just not be there for damage-wise like Broxa can, and that shows in the damage per minute, where Broxa's was nearly 300. It was 296.6 damage per minute, where Xmithie's was only 187.2. So, of course, that's a huge difference between the two, and that also shows because of the damage participation, or damage percentage, between the two. Broxa nearly a 15%. Xmithie at 10%. So you have these differences between the two. And the last thing that I just want to point out, and I know I'm pointing out a lot of stats, but I'm trying to drive home my point of I'm excited about this move, but I do have my worries about it, is in the early game percentages. So ahead at CS in 15 minutes, they are actually identical at 38.9%. But the biggest difference is the gold differential and experience differential at 15 minutes. Xmithie is normally down 26 gold and down 90 experience at 15 minutes. Not huge differences, but when it comes to Broxa, he's usually ahead 132 gold and ahead by 8 XP. So as we talk about it before, a lot of these games at the pro level is a snowballing effect. If you can get ahead early and you're a good team, you will snowball that into a huge lead and end the game early. Sometimes you're going to have to suffer some deaths for that snowballing effect, which is at least what you see from Broxa. However, my fear is now that he's going to be playing with a different team, will that translate into wins? Because, of course, Team Liquid has set the expectation now. They're no longer the forever fourths. They are a win or bust, a win or it's a bad season. And ideally for them, the goal they've already set is to win Worlds. Does this move do that? I think it at least puts them in more of aggressive stance, so we won't see maybe as long of games as we have seen from Team Liquid. But those stats do make me, I guess, teetering on the wall of loving it and hating this move.
To go on just really quick before I talk about the Broxa move overall, the stat you were talking about with Broxa being ahead in a lot of the games early on, I think it's going to be massive this split, because without the jungle XP you get now for the catch-up XP, you cannot make mistakes now. Now counter jungling and everything else is going to be massive. The better jungler is going to win these games now, officially. There's no, if I fall behind, it's okay because I'm going to catch up anyways because I get, the bonus XP to do the catch up. So now that they've changed that, jungling, counter jungling, and getting ahead, your team ahead, and making the enemy jungler fall behind is going to be huge this year. And with Broxa, just that stat alone is really nice to know for Team Liquid. I would still consider Team Liquid overall favorites. I'm not going to crown them yet, but they are obviously going to be the favorites going in. They've won multiple splits now. But Broxa, between Broxa and Xmithy, I would say it's somewhat of a lateral move, but what you're losing, as you said, you're losing kind of the glue to me, especially because you got big-headed guys on there. I mean, you got Double Whips, which, he's really cooled down and stuff, but overall, though, he has a lot of opinions. Jensen,
everybody else is trash.
We know how Jensen is with having, with his mindset and everything else. So, Xmithy, to me, was a guy that was always that cool point. I can just keep everybody going and moving. But Broxa, though, as you said, it could be just like a massive, we're going to destroy teams now. That's what I look at. Broxa, and you have more of a mechanically sound player in Broxa. Mechanically wise, Broxa's a better player than Smithy. He's going to be able to bring out the Lee Sins and different things like that he's going to mechanically be a lot better at. But overall, it's somewhat of a lateral move because you're losing some stuff you would get with Xmithy, but you're gaining others things that you would get with Broxa.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I agree with you. I think this is more of a lateral move than it is an upgrade, but I do think that at least in Steve's mind, it is an upgrade because he is looking to make the games faster and be more dominant, and that's where I have my reservations of, is this actually an upgrade? Because yes, you're right, early game, that is going to be so important, and the damage per minute, we want somebody who is more of an aggressive jungler that makes plays, something that we see in the LCK and the LPL, where they have junglers who are not afraid to get out there and make plays happen. And Xmithy can do that, but he doesn't do it often. Broxa does it a lot, but you have to be calculated, and sometimes those calculations aren't always there with Broxa, but I do find that as a big move. Kyle, let's kind of break down the rosters a little bit, or break down some of the moves that happened. And let's kind of start, I guess, after we've talked about Team Liquid, because that's the only move that they've made, at least at the moment. Who knows, maybe there's something comes out later on, but ideally, this is the final roster. Let's go with your team, C9, making some changes this summer, and no longer any original faces on the team.
Nope.
It is an all new, well, not new, but technically from the original C9 team. It is all new faces. Kyle, talk about the Sven pickup as well as getting Vulcan as your guys' support.
I'm pretty excited about this roster. I'm glad. I've been saying it for the past year and a half. As you know, that I felt like Sneaky needed to move on from Cloud9. Not that I'm saying Sneaky's bad. I've just always wanted a playmaking ADC that can just get rolling, especially later in the game when team fights start happening and stuff like that. Sven has proven that even in EU, where he's been able to farm up, just do his thing in lane. But once out of lane, he can just take over moments for you. And I really like that change. A lot of C9 fans are Reddit and everything else. It's been it's been interesting because I mean they're sneaky fans. They're not really Cloud9 fans. They're sneaky fans, and they're saying the C9 rosters, they've gone down and everything else. But I think it's a pretty good upgrade. Vulcan, up and coming NA talent, carried games at support for clutch. I mean, some of the plays he would make was unbelievable. He's really good at initiation supports, which is not a big thing over here for some reason, but he can play those Leonas and different things and make massive plays. So I really think that bot lane's a pretty good upgrade. I don't think at the start you may not see, depending on how they gel, but obviously they're not going to be a lane that's going to be like a core JJ double lift lane where they're going to take over the bot lane and win lane. They're a lane that's going to try to keep pace with the bot lane and then take over as the game moves on. And with the jungle changes, I losing Sven, it's a big thing. Obviously, he's an MVP, but I'm really excited to see what Blabber can bring to the table now. Like having a full split under his belt to see what he really brings. Especially, as I said, with Broxah in him with the early game, Blabber is insane at early game, and then he just doesn't know how to stop, and then he ends up inting all the time. But Blabber's early game, though, is really good, and now that you don't have the catch-up XP, though, I feel those early game ganks and, kills and everything that Blabber gets can take the C9 to the next level. And I feel this team, along with TL, is a at least top 4 team. Overall, though, I like the changes. I'm glad there's changes. I feel like there needed to be changes. And we can always count on Reaper being coach there, that he's so good at bringing out the best in players. So I'm excited to see what this all entails overall.
Personally, I feel they did one too many moves, and that, in my opinion, is the Sven Skaren for Blabber. I understand the move. I understand wanting to get younger, and as you said, Blabber can be a little bit more aggressive, similar to the issue with Xmithy and Broxah, is that Sven Skaren sometimes isn't as aggressive, and so you have Blabber there for that reason. But I feel like if you left Sven Skaren there, and then you made the other changes, that this roster is even better than where it currently sits. And I was just doing a quick look, just kind of comparing numbers, and I know it's hard to compare numbers sometime just because depending on how your team has performed, it might not be, I guess, the all-telling truth. So you always need to take the numbers with a grain of salt. But just to kind of like compare numbers between Sneaky and Sven, Sneaky had the higher win rate, of course, at 70% versus Sven's, 55. But of course, that's Cloud9 versus TSM there. But the biggest things that I just that jumped out to me, so this is why I wanted to point them out, is KDA. Sneaky had a higher KDA by 1.5. But where I think you talk about it, and I think that Cloud9 is at when it comes to the thought process behind the change, is again in the early game, similar to where it was with Broxah and Xmithy, is in the early game. Sneaky is ahead in CS in only 47% of the games. He's usually behind by at least 5.5, behind in gold differential at 227, and behind at XP at 285, where Sven is usually ahead in 66.7% of the games. His differential at 15 minutes overall, though, is down at 6.9, which is, of course, lower than Sneaky, but in gold differential, he's ahead at 230. So you look at those kind of numbers and you think, well, if I might be behind in CS, but if I'm ahead in gold, that means I'm getting kills. And that does show, again, where the kill percentage, or first blood percentage, I should say, is Sven has basically a 10% advantage over Sneaky, but he also has a higher time of being the first blood victim. So it's a high risk, high reward type of guy, but we know what he can do. We've seen it in the past. We've seen spurts of it on TSM. As we talked before, I just don't think TSM was a great move for him, but we've seen what he can do in the EU, and I think that works out with what Cloud9 wants. And then Vulcan, as you said, played amazing with FlyQuest, and I think definitely is the guy that they're trying to build around over there, or not build around, but there to make plays, and with somebody who's aggressive like Sven, that is what you want. You want to make plays. So I love the pickup from Vulcan.
The somewhat of an underrated thing, because I feel like they still could have upgraded Niski, but if you go and look at Niski's numbers, he had the most kills in mid lane and everything else. His numbers were actually not that bad. He just doesn't feel like a player that can carry a team.
Yeah.
I don't know what you get from that, but if you look at his numbers overall, it's pretty good. But overall, though, this team, Jack has decided Licorice is his guy. They're going to build around Licorice. Having an NA top lane talent that can be top 3 in NA is really big for teams, and having that. And Licorice can carry. And I think having somebody like Licorice that hopefully he has a team that he can believe in, because it's just going to up everything else then.
Yeah, no, definitely. And also, I want to correct myself. I accidentally said FlyQuest. I meant Clutch Gaming for Vulcan. Yeah. But no, definitely agree. I think you could have upgraded Niski. I mean, he played well. So let me put it this way. He played well when he was in EU. I know when he first got brought over, you talked about in that last episode that we had talked about that you were excited to see what he could do. You didn't think he would be like a Jensen, but you were excited to see what he could do. Mm-hmm. And he overall did fairly well. But I think the person I'm about to say is actually better than Niski, but I am going to correlate Niski to something that a lot of people think of, which is a pole belter. Where pole belter is, I can see your face already. I know you can't see mine, but I can already see your face. Is like pole belter is one of those guys that, in a lot of people say, when it comes to being in the splits, the summer splits, or in your regional split, he plays very, very well and performs really well against other mid laners. But when you travel outside of it, that's where you see the faults and you see the issues that mid lane carries. And I think that was very prevalent with this Worlds run with Niski. Against the LCS mid laners, he did fairly well and performed fairly well. But then as soon as he went to Worlds, went to that international competition, it was like he disappeared. And that is hard to have when you know that mid lane is so important at the world stage that I'm just a little surprised. Maybe he did try it, but maybe he didn't. But I'm just a little surprised that Jack didn't look to upgrade Niski or upgrade that mid lane because of that importance.
No, I don't know. Like Niski, like I said, and I think it's champ based too. I'm still not sure of Niski's pool exactly. I know he was really good on the Aurelia, and there was a couple others that he was pretty decent at. I'm just, as you said, I think he can hang with other mid laners here in the LCS. But when you start getting into the world stage and different things like that, then it starts to become a question. Because to me, like, if you look at Niski and then, like, you look at LEC mids, where's he starting in the LEC? But then again, that's why if you look at LCS, who do we have? A bunch of people from EU and everything else, because just mid lane overall is overall better players coming from EU.
Yeah. I think there are, again, personally, I think there are better options than Niski. Not to say Niski shouldn't play. I think he's a good player, and I think he should be on a team. But I do think there are other mid lane options, and especially other mid lane options who maybe were former players that either had some time off or whatever, and are very hungry to be in that mid lane and dominate again. That I think you could have looked that way. But nonetheless, we'll see what C9 pulls out of this. Kyle, now let's talk about Dignitas, because last we talked was that they were having trouble signing people because they gave Huni such a big contract, and Huni was going to play in the mid lane. And now the reported team is Huni is not playing in mid lane. He's back to top lane, and they have a really good mid laner there. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts on the Dignitas team.
Overall, I think it's all right. I still don't see this team being, I think, kind of mid to the pack. But Huni staying in top lane, that's, as you said, with that contract, broke everything. Jungle, question-wise, they're bringing in Greg, so I'm not sure who's going to be starting exactly, because they have Anda still. So I don't know if this can be a swap role, like if they're going to bring in Greg sometimes, bring in Anda. I'm not a biggest fan of Greg, and Anda's can be good, but he's, consistency-wise, not the greatest. Bringing in Froggen, I think, is a good move, but we know by now, like, I'm personally a big fan of Froggen in general. I love his play. I love his CS, how he could just get massive leads with CS and everything else. But Froggen's the guy now. We're at that point, like Huni, you know what he is, and you know what you're getting. He's not going to roam bottom to go help your bot lane. He's not going to roam top to help. He's just going to focus on himself, farm up, and then try to, once team fights to happen, get in there. The Johnson pickup, I really like. This kid could be really good, and I'm really excited to see what he can do. But he's playing with Afromu or Matt, and that I do not like. Afromu is another guy that's been around the league for a long time. I think has overstayed his welcome a little bit, but it'll be interesting to see how the veteran like Afromu can help someone like a young player like Johnson. Maybe that's why they did it, is to try to bring someone that knows the game a little bit more, especially being on the main stage, to help Johnson, to help him adjust to the lights, the bigger stage. So that'll be an interesting bot lane to see how that goes. But overall, though, it's nothing that's scary. It's a team that will get wins unexpectedly sometimes here and there, but a team that's also just going to be sitting there towards the mid-bottom of the pack.
I think this team is a fan grabber. I don't think that this team is designed to fully go on and compete. Because if you think about it, Huni, big fan following. Froggen, big fan following. Afromu, big fan following. That's what I see with this. Now, I will say, personally, I don't mind the Afromu pickup, simply because he is a great veteran voice. And when you look at that team, I think personally, well, I shouldn't say personally. This isn't personally. I think, if I remember correctly, Afromu is the only one who has spent time as a shot caller on that team. I don't think Froggen ever spent time as a shot caller. Huni, I don't think ever spent time as a shot caller. And I know Grig and Anda have never done that. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure Afromu is brought on to be the shot caller, or at least coach or meld someone into being a shot caller, which might end up being Grig or Anda, because a lot of people usually have their jungler be that shot caller. I also think Afromu still has stuff in the tank, because has he fallen off from previous splits? Yes, but have we also still seen him be the old Afromu, which is taking over games, and of course one of our good friends who loves Afromu, why he fell in love with Afromu? Yes, we've seen those instances. But I do think at their current play levels, Matt is better. And Matt also spent time as a shot caller. So again, another reason why I think Matt is on this team is that shot caller is going to be out of the support role. Johnson, I don't have a ton of knowledge on him, so I'm not going to really comment on that. I will say, just as a LCS fan, it's good to see a new player in there, and so we'll see how that kind of goes and how that plays out. Froggen, he's Froggen, exactly what you said. You know what you got from him, and I don't think you're going to get the Froggen that you and I used to really love. I think you're going to get the Froggen that you see now, which has always been, he just kind of controls mid lane. He's not going to go off very much. He's not going to die a whole lot. He's going to just be him. And we'll probably see a lot of Anivia bans. Let me just say it that way. Grig Anda, don't like that jungle. I like Anda more than I like Grig. But overall, don't like that jungle. And then Huni is Huni. I just think this team is honestly a bottom of the pack team, and it is just put together to get fan base. Dignitas wants people to be fans of Dignitas again in the LCS, and now that their name is there, it's who has the biggest following, let's just sign them and let's throw that team out there.
Yep.
Simple as that. TSM. Do you see? I was about to say, do you want me to start or do you want to start?
You can start this one because your boy's over here now.
Yeah. So I personally don't know how to feel about TSM. This is the reason. I think on paper, this team can be really good. Okay? It can be really good. I honestly think this team is set up to possibly win a split. I won't say they will win both splits, but I think they can win a split. But you're also on paper putting in a guy, Dardoch, who you know I'm a huge fan of, has showed consistently in the past that he can lose his cool. And when he loses his cool, things go south fast. Hopefully, I think the idea behind it though is Dardoch is there because Bjergsen has been a great leader and can continue to be a great leader, and I think that he is there to help try to keep Dardoch in check. Biofrost seems to be a fairly level-headed kid. Shouldn't say kid. He's not a kid anymore. Fairly level-headed. So he definitely, I think, is there, can keep kind of the peace. Broken Blade obviously has a very high ceiling. We've seen it before. I know that he didn't perform as well as some people thought, but he has a very high ceiling, so you're still having him there for that reason. And then, as you already know, I love Kabi. I think Kabi is a great pickup, and this is huge for him. So I like this team, but I just don't know what we're getting out of it. And that's the thing. Like, this is that team that I could easily see winning it or be middle of the pack. Like, it's one or the other.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Biofrost move, obviously, I think growing up, him going elsewhere, not being on TSM, going to CLG and everything, being able to bring a voice out of him and stuff, and then bringing him back is a good move for them. Broken Blade, as you said, I think there's a lot there still, a lot of potential. People are kind of writing him off too soon, and I feel like you need to give the kid another chance. He showed in Spring Split and why they brought him in. And then I get that summer he fell off a little bit, but give the kid a chance. You never know. Bjergsen's Bjergsen. You know I'm not a fan of Dardoch because of what has happened and the way he is. But Dardoch, though, is a really good jungler when he wants to be. And TSM has finally brought Dardoch into because Dardoch looks up to Bjergsen. Bjergsen is Dardoch's role model. Like, he is a massive fan of Bjergsen. And I think if there's any time for Dardoch to finally work out on a team, it could possibly be this. Because maybe you're finally bringing in Dardoch into a situation where he's actually willing to listen to somebody. And that somebody being Bjergsen. And Bjergsen being who he is, part shares of TSM itself is going to have a lot of say in this. So Bjergsen himself has a lot of power in this. And I think it's a move that, again, can either destroy the team within or, like as you said, will compete to try to win it all. And then Kabe, you brought me on to Kabe. You've always been the Kabe truther, and he is really good. My biggest thing about Kabe is he's an import ADC, and so far we have not been able to find an import ADC that has worked. Sven really didn't fit into TSM, but he failed. Bang came over to 100 T, failed pretty hard. So it'll be interesting to see what Kabe brings into the table and see if he can actually be an ADC that says, hey, listen, import ADC can work, and here's why.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if Kabe can finally I mean, there have been spurts with other import ADCs. And namely I look at, Piglet, for instance, with Team Liquid. Was Piglet ever where he was when he won with SKT? No, but there were spurts where you were like, yeah, this is exactly why Team Liquid brought Piglet in. But you're right. More often than not, it just has not worked out when an import is an ADC role. So we'll see what happens in there. I think Kabe can be the guy that changes that, and I also do think this team is built well for Kabe's playstyle. So we will see how that works. But yeah, and it's hard for me because I was such a huge Dardoch fan, being a Team Liquid guy, and the way that they came out, and then watching that team just implode makes it so hard because I want to continue to be a Dardoch fan, and I still sing his praises because you're right, he is such a good jungler.
He is. Mm-hmm.
But because of those experiences and the experiences that happened after he left Team Liquid, like, in the back of my mind, I'm just like, I don't know if this is going to be the time. Like, will this finally be the time that it works out? I hope so, but I just don't know. We already talked about CLG, so we'll skip them. Let's go to FlyQuest. So Kyle, well, I'll have you start. Let's start with one person in particular, and then you continue your talks after it. But I just want to go with Ignar at support for FlyQuest. How do you feel that Wild Turtle Ignar team will work out?
I think actually, surprisingly, that Ignar Wild Turtle can actually work well together. They're both guys that like to play aggressive and like to go in. Ignar loves to make plays. We saw that with Misfits, with Hans Sama, even though that team imploded pretty bad over there. But Ignar in general, though, has a pretty big voice, and he likes to make plays. Wild Turtle loves to jump in to try to make plays. Granted, it's 50-50. Half the time it doesn't work, and he dies. He continues to die. But there's other times that it works out, and he looks like, holy crap, this is why Wild Turtle's been around for so long. So you got two guys that love making plays bot lane. So it'll be extremely interesting to see what works for him and what doesn't. Like, that's going to be the interesting thing, and how they play with the little new Covey down bottom and everything else they have. So you got two highly playmaking guys on bot lane. Now it's just a matter of Wild Turtle following up at the right time or going into early, dying or not dying. But overall, I do like the Ignar move. I'm a pretty big Ignar fan, being over from Misfits and what have you. But it could go 50-50 on that.
I like Ignar and Wild Turtle as a group. My issue is similar to what you kind of were talking about, is both of them being so aggressive is how often are they going to be actually successful? Because we know Wild Turtle is still such a good ADC, and I still firmly believe Wild Turtle could still be like a top ADC, but his mistakes or his aggressiveness gets him in trouble so much, which is why he's a higher end good ADC, but like you wouldn't call him a top ADC. And you hope Ignar's aggressiveness and the way he plays helps that out so that Wild Turtle succeeds more often than he's failing. But that is my only concern there. The other thing, though, I am really excited to see is Ignar Blitzcrank with a Wild Turtle. Like, I can't wait to see whatever Wild Turtle plays, but with Ignar's Blitzcrank, I want to see the success that happens, because we already know Ignar's a great support, but personally, I feel he has the best Blitzcrank there is. So I can't wait to see that happen. But because we have this kind of, I would say we're kind of 50-50 on this bot lane, just because we talked about there's a really good potential, but we also could see, them failing a lot. You have a mid laner that I love, but also know his faults in Power of Evil, who is not a great roamer, does not do very well getting to the bot lane to help out things. Now let's talk about the rest of the team, and basically starting there is, do you think that hurts that bot lane because you don't have somebody who you can count on to make aggressive collapses or roams in the bot lane?
I feel laning phase, it can hurt, because Power Evil is going to be Power Evil. He's going to want his Orianna. He's going to want his Syndra. He's going to want anybody that his Karma, that he can control lane with. He's a control mage player. He doesn't like to make plays. He likes to sit back, control the mid lane, and potentially make those big plays later, which could be good, because if you throw him on, like, say Orianna is good in this meta, or somebody like that, or Karma, you could protect Ignar and Wild Turtle. He could shield Ignar going in aggressively. He can, save Wild Turtle from making a stupid play from shielding them or what have you. But it's interesting. You go from aggressive to a guy that likes to play his own way. Power of Evil is stuck in Power of Evil's head. Like, this is what he wants. This is what he wants to play. There is nothing else. Don't tell me anything else. Like, I want these champs. So it'll be interesting to see if they actually do get him developed to try to get, put onto something else. But I highly doubt it. He has his comfort, and that's what he sticks to it. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And again, it's another thing that can be 50-50, because who knows on, like, it depends on where Santorin put, which is obviously their jungler still, where he puts his focuses on, top side, bot side, where he goes. And then overall, Viper, he's really good. Viper's a really, really good player. I think he's the guy that TSM should have gone after if they wanted to move on from Brooklyn Blade. Like, Viper's a really talented guy, can hold his own. But overall, Power Evil, it'll be interesting to see how they mix his playstyle with Wild Turtle Ignar's playstyle.
I agree with you on Viper. I think he is a great top laner, could easily be top 3 top laners, but just is not on a team that allows to showcase his actual abilities. So, yeah, we'll see how this team, does that help him be able to showcase his abilities more? Santorin is the one that is always 50-50 for me, because we see like splits where he is really good and you're like, yeah, this is the original reason on why TSN brought him over, and he's been able to stick around in this league. And then you also see moments and instances and splits where it's like, man, this is why he also doesn't get to stay around very long, because he just disappears. So it's hard to say which Santorin you're going to have. Power Evil, as you said, we already know what he is, and as much as I love this guy, because as you know, I'm a huge Unicorns of Love fan, and when he, the original Unicorns of Love fan, Power of Evil was there, and back then, I was singing his praises. I'm sure, I don't know if we had our videos of YouTube up, but I do have it on my my hard drive, if anyone wants those episodes where I was just singing the praises of Power of Evil all the time. He has really changed from that early Power of Evil where he was always so aggressive and always dying. His KDA was probably like a 1 because he was always like dying and trading. to now, yeah, is he plays those same champions that he was super aggressive on, but now he just controls lane. He doesn't want to roam very often because I think he's afraid of how much the boom or bust moves that he did early in his career did hurt his team. That I feel like he just can't get out of his own head and he just plays this same way no matter what.
Yep.
This is a team I think is middle of the pack. I think this is a pretty good team. I think it's middle of the pack. I think their ceiling is making playoffs. I don't think they make anything past that. If they really succeed, they make playoffs. If they meet expectations, it's middle of the pack.
Yep, they're better than last year, but they're not a team that's built to win completely unless some crazy stuff happens. But like you said, middle pack, playoffs, berth.
So let's go to the next team, which is, I will say honestly, probably the second most interesting team in my opinion. For me, I will say, is 100 Thieves. Just because of where they were to where their moves have been. I'm very interested to see what this team can do, because everyone on this roster has high ceilings or has shown in the past a high play level.
Yeah.
But also, nearly everyone on this team, I would say besides Someday, has also shown a very low play level and times where, of course, why they haven't spent time on teams. Besides also Ryoma, I don't have a whole lot of information or background with him, so I can't say a whole lot on that. But I'm going to start the talk, and then you can take over from here. So Someday, completely 100% agree you keep him. You don't get rid of Someday. Such a great top laner, has always been a great top laner, and continues to show it in the LCS. I think last year things didn't go as well for him because also overall the team didn't do very well. Meteos, solid jungler. I think he has really revitalized his career, basically put new life back into it, and shows that he can still be that great top tier jungler. He has those issues and moments where he kind of disappears and you don't know what you're getting for him. Make sure you always ban Lee Sin from him. Don't let him play Lee Sin. But I think that is a great top side with jungler and Someday, Meteos and them too. I already said, don't know a whole lot about Ryoma. Can't use a lot of instances for him, so I will defer a little bit to you, and I'll look up some more information to try to help with the discussion in that regards. But then I look at Cody. Cody's son, or Cody now, has, again, moments where he has played top 2 ADCs, but he's also had moments where he is bottom 2 ADCs. So it depends on just what Cody's son we're going to get this time. And I think the only person that sticks out in my mind that holds this team back a little bit, not a ton, but a little bit, is Stunt. I've never been a huge Stunt fan. Personally, I'm just not. And I think it's probably because he's pretty mediocre or average in my opinion. And so I feel like when you put Cody and that together, that's what is my biggest concern, is if you're not getting the top 2 Cody son that he can be at times, and you get the average or bottom tier Cody son, that bot lane is going to fall behind almost every single game. And we just talked about it earlier. If you fall behind early, especially if it's a general I'm having a brain fart, but essentially if it is one that is fairly big, you're not going to be able to go out of it, and Cody's son can't fall behind because his play style doesn't allow him to fall behind. He doesn't have a comeback card in his place kit. So this is why I'm really interested in this team, but I'm not expecting huge things from them.
Yeah, as you said, someday. I don't really have to go into that. Meteos, you've basically hit it on the head. Cody, like you said, he has his highs, he has his lows. He's a player that's really can be really good, it's a player they brought back. I mean, Meteos too. They brought him back. The reasoning for it is because they moved on from Aframu. There's been multiple guys have heard Loco and Dom and different guys like that has come out and even said they've also heard from inside sources that Afro and Cody just could not play together. Cody has too much of a voice, an opinionated guy, pretty hot-headed, and Afro just could not play with him. He didn't enjoy it. So it'll be interesting to see how Cody comes in with that. And Stunt, Local played with him in the Tyler 1 tournament and stuff, and he said he has knowledge of the game. He's a good young and up-and-coming support, but he's still not there yet. As a guy that maybe more experience within the main rosters can become and develop into something, but very questionable, which, as you said, that bot side could be, could be really bad, or it could be taking over a game. It just, like you said, what Cody are we going to get? And in Ryoma, I've heard just from, as you said, I don't know a whole lot about him exactly, but I've heard from Dom talking, Loco and them. Dom doesn't like him. He said he's a guy that they could have easily put anybody else in there. They could have used Dominate or anybody else they could have grabbed. And they feel like could have been a better option. But as he said, too, maybe there's something he doesn't know about anymore. Maybe there's some changes that has happened with Ryoma, so it'll be really interesting to see somebody come in. And not a EU or Korea or LPL import. You're getting somebody from Oceanic, is he from?
Oceania.
I believe, yeah. So it's really interesting to see some guys now making moves from other regions like that into the LCS to see how they perform. Because when you look at other areas like that, like Turkey, Oceanic, competition-wise, it's so much lower than, yes, I am saying it. The OCS is higher than those guys. We are a major region. Don't forget it. We are. There are other regions that are actually worse than us, which is insane because there's other regions that just doesn't have that. You get diamond players that are playing in the pros in other regions, which here would be our platinum players or,
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting to see what Ryoma does do. It's a big question mark. I'm excited to see it, though, see how somebody from Oceanic and stuff can come over to the LCS and form. So I'm excited to see how that personally happens. But overall, it's a team that can win some, a team that can lose some. Another team, as most of these other teams other than the top four, are that mid to pack could be decent, could be bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will say, so I was looking up his stats, and the reason I deferred a little bit for Ryoma is, of course, 100 Thieves put out a video when they signed him,
Mm-hmm.
and of course in that video they're not going to be like, well, he's pretty mediocre. They're always like, we signed this guy because he's excellent, he's great, he plays really well, he's really smart, all this stuff. And so it's like, yeah, okay, great. Like 100 Thieves says he's great, but I don't have experience because, again, he's from Oceania. Like in Oceania, we don't watch it. It just is hard to watch. Not in it's bad to watch, but just it is overall hard to find and watch. But just looking at his stats, trying to get some kind of comparison. Again, keep these with the thought in mind. Is at least in Oceania, he kind of dominated his opponents.
Mm-hmm.
His KDA was a 3.8 in the most recent split. He was ahead in 76% of the games. CS, he was ahead. Gold differential ahead. Experience ahead. First blood participation at 23%. He's definitely got some playmaking abilities, and this improved from his time in the first split, which was just slightly lower than what it. Well, I will say experience-wise was way higher, but everything else was just slightly ahead of the first split. So in Oceania, really good mid laner. That's great to hear, but that's hard to say. How will that translate to the LCS? We will find out, of course. You have to find out as it goes on. But that's why it's hard to say right now what that means for this team. So that's why I'm focused on everyone else, and we am leading Ryoma to show me what he can do, what
Yep.
he will be able to do. And I hope good things for him. You, at least for me, and I know you feel this way too. I don't know if our listeners feel this way, but for me, I'm always, especially for somebody like this, coming from a region that is not typically seen imports wise, I am excited and hope that they do well. That's just overall what I hope. But I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, he's going to be great, or yeah, he's going to be bad, just because he came from Oceania. We'll just have to see.
Yep.
And let's go to the next team. I'm really excited for this team, only simply for the fact because of their name is back, and that is Evil Geniuses. I love Evil Geniuses. I think that name is still a great organization name. And I loved the video that they put out when they were announcing Evil Geniuses was back. So that was great. Got me hyped, I will say, for this team. And then the roster comes out, and I'm not as hyped, but still interested, type of thing. I will say this is probably one of the mid-ish teams for me. Kyle, what do you think of Evil Genius's roster?
Marketing-wise, amazing. Really well done. The whole evil thing and everything else. It's amazing what they have done. And then the dig on TSM, wonderful. Bring some, rivals and everything else. But this has to be one of the most unevil group of people. Sven's Garen, always smiling, happy. Zazo, big, jolly man. Marketing wise, and then your team.
They're faking it.
Yeah. But team wise overall, though, Akumo, up and coming, young. Yeah, C9 guy. Showed potential when he played on the main roster a couple games. Still can't say for sure, though, how he performed overall throughout a split. Big question mark. Sven's Garen, MVP. Huge move for Evil Geniuses. You need to bring in a big guy name like that, MVP, someone to try to mold the team together with. Zazo, Goers 2.0 again, C9. Another guy that has a lot of potential. He was good. He did like to int here and there at times that he should not have been doing. He liked to try to go into ward areas that he probably was overextending to try to ward, get caught out, die. Bang. All we can hope for Bang is somehow he can bring back championship Bang. I mean, there's nothing else to say on Bang other than that. The fact that you hope for the best of Bang. Bot side though, Bang, Zazo together. Again, another lane that's going to be very patient. A team that's going to a bot lane that's going to want to farm up and not fight a whole lot till later on. And then I always mess up his name. Their new mid laner.
Okay.
Jizuke. There we go. Jizuke. I always mess up his name. I can never say for some reason. It's an interesting move. We've seen really high highs with that guy, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of meta it brings. Because certain when he came aboard and he was playing the LeBlancs and different things like that, it was insane watching him carry some of those games. So it'll be interesting to see how the meta plays out with him and how he adjusts over to the LCS compared to the EU.
I agree, and Zyra wanted to join us, so she's on my lap right now. Anyway, I agree. I'm interested to see Jizuke and how he performs in the LCS. I will say, though, I don't think he's going to perform as well as he did over in the LEC, simply just because I don't see this roster as good as what he had over on Vitality. So I hope I'm wrong, just simply because I do like Jizuke, but I just don't think he's going to perform as well. The solid mark on this team personally is Svenskeren. Solid mark. Again, I said earlier, I think Cloud9 shouldn't have gotten rid of him. They did, so oh well. Evil Geniuses now gets that evil smile of his, right? And 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 personally, me, this is just my own opinion. You guys can sound off in the comments if you guys think I'm completely off base, and I think Kyle will say I'm completely off base too. Is I don't think Zazel is that good, so I don't like that pickup. And I think with how Bang performed when he came over now, that is not going to be a very good bot lane unless Bang finds himself somehow, and becomes even a version of his old Bang self. Kumo, as you said, an academy player basically now getting a chance to be a full-time starter. We'll see how that turns out. As you said, he showed some promise and some good games when he got to play on the starting roster for a little bit, but you just never know when it's a full split how that's going to shape up. So I super excited that Evil Geniuses is back in the LCS, but disappointed in this first roster just because I don't see this team being very successful. Hopefully, though, they are, simply just because I like, again, Evil Geniuses' name. So hopefully. Immortals now.
Okay, Boomer.
Oh, whoa, all right. Immortals now. This team is interesting. Simply because this is the team with probably, in my opinion, the highest ceiling, but also the lowest ceiling. I'm saying it in that regards, like where they could hit is such a wide difference compared to all the other teams. Like, there are some teams that have a high ceiling and a low ceiling and stuff, but I feel like for this team, like, their ceiling, like, is way above where their floor is, because their floor could be really bad, but their ceiling, if everyone plays to their potential, could be very, very good. I mean, I will start it just because I'm talking about this, is Soaz. He has been in recent splits, I will say, that guy where he has the matches that you're like, yeah, this is the Fnatic Soaz, where you were like, holy crap, like, you just can't do anything against this guy. He's always going to win. And then he has times where it's like, yeah, Soaz, you should have retired a while ago. Like, I don't know why you're still playing. Xmithy, we just talked about it. Really good jungler. So I really like this pickup for this team. I think that this is great. And I don't think Xmithy needs to retire yet. He's a very solid jungler, still top tier jungler. I think that's great. Ica, he had games in the LEC where it was like, man, this is really good. And then there were games where it was like, how is this guy on a roster? Altec, his entire career, as much as you and I love Altec has had those games where it's like, holy crap, this guy's a top tier ADC. What are teams doing? Like, why are they not going after this guy? And then you also have games where you're like, holy crap, how is this dude still on a team? Like, what is going on? And Hakuo, similar instances with when he was with Clutch Gaming, where he has these really amazing matches. Typically, those are on Thresh. And then there are matches where it's like, why is he still on a team? So that's why, like, in my opinion, again, I think this team has such a low floor, and then based on the distance between that floor and their ceiling, they have the highest ceiling, because they have so much. They could be anywhere from, I would say, literally maybe team 4 if they all perform at the levels that they can be, all the way to bottom team. Like, I think they could be team 10. Like, that's how big of a difference I think this team could be.
All right, I'm calling this team the Boomer team as why, because so as Smithy, you got some old guys on here. No, but Soaz, though, last split even, has just dropped. To me, this is his retirement. Like, him coming over here to try one more time, this is his last shot to try to just compete. Xmithy, as you said, good overall jungler. On this team, though, he got paid. He got paid. There is a bidding war between like Immortals, Dig, TL, TSM. Immortals won that bidding war. He got paid because if I'm Smithy and I'm sitting here saying, all right, what are you going to build around me? And you told me it's going to be Soaz, Altec, Hakuo. I'd be like, no. I'd be like, no, I'm going elsewhere to try to compete and win. Because to me, if I'm going to this team, I know I'm not winning. Ica, like you said, really low lows. He had his good games, like you said, was like, holy crap, but really low lows. Altec, as you said, I'm a fan of him. He's been in Korea for a while, too. He's played a lot of Korea solo queue, and I guess he's climbed really high, and he's gotten a lot better. Ica, I've heard, has improved in the French league, but we'll see how he can bring it over here. Ica, what I've heard in a local interview with the commentator, is he's a pole belter now, is what he mechanically not gifted at all, but can bring things to the table that can, like pole belter did. And I've never been a fan of Hakuo. I'm just gonna straight up say I've never been a fan of Hakuo. But to me, where you say your high is 2, my high for this team,
I didn't say 2. I said 4. Their
4,
high is 4.
I'm at 4. I'm saying my high for this team is like 7, maybe.
Dang!
Yeah, I don't see this team doing well at all because I don't see Smithy doing a whole lot with the team. Like I think Smithy has benefited a lot. I'm not taking away anything from Smithy, but he has benefited a lot being able to play with guys that can completely carry game. Double lift again on TL. You know, like he's had teams that were just really, really good. And now that he's got to play with this team again, he got paid. Like, because Smithy's not a guy that's going to carry it. So, this team's just very meh.
I've never been a fan of Hakuo either. I'm just saying based off of skill level, though. He has had games where he plays very, very well. And typically, those games have always been on Thresh. So, you know, can he do that on another champion? I don't know. But Thresh, yes, we know that he can play very well on Thresh. Mm-hmm. I will completely disagree with you on thinking that Xmithy has benefited just simply because he's played with some good players. I think Xmithy is a very solid jungler, and I still think he's going to be very solid on this team. Will that translate into, like, kills and wins? That's a different story because, as you're right, this roster is not as good as past rosters that he's played on. But I will just say I still think that he plays very well as a jungler, and I still think he can. I agree with you. I think Soaz retires after this spring split. I don't even think he finishes the year. I think spring split ends, he retires, and they have to get a new top laner for summer. And yeah, I think if everyone performs at their peak and it continues to play that way, they finish a 4. But I definitely see, like, this could be the bottom tier team. Mm-hmm. And then let's go into the last team.
You mean last place team?
I think this is Team 9. I will say that. I do think, ending-wise, I think Immortals does finish probably 10. But I think this is Team 9. Is Golden Guardians. And as much as I want this team to succeed, just because they do have names on there that are people that I'm a fan of, this is like the team that when you think of, all right, we're going to do a grab bag now, put the blindfold on, like, we're going to shake up these balls, just reach in and grab 5, and, like, that's your team. That's what I think of this team as.
I feel bad for Haunter.
Yes, me too. And honestly, I will say I also feel bad for Golden Glue, just because I still think that he's better. I think he's better than what people think, and he did show it when he was with Cloud9 for that time being. But I don't think he has enough people around him to allow him to do anything. Like, I think we're going to see the old Golden Glue simply because this roster is just, like, it's not there for him. It's just not there.
Yeah, I feel bad for Hunter. FBI is another guy that I think could be really good, but he has been stuck with terrible supports for the past since he's come over here. And I feel bad for him too a little bit because I think FBI could be really, really good. Like that kid has a lot of potential being really good. But now you go from who was the support last split? But you
It
go from,
was man. See, this is how forgettable this team's been.
I know it's been bad. But now you have Keith. My point is, well, now you have Keith doing a row swap. And why did they row swap him? Because he has good fingers. Because mechanically he's good, but with the sport, you don't need to be mechanically good. You need to know the game. You need to be smart. Keith is not a smart player. That's why he played ADC. That's why I play ADC. I'm there to farm up and get kills. Like Keith overall going to support. It's just they couldn't get who they wanted to get, so they had no other option. Like and the closer will be interesting. He does well. He did well, obviously. When he was with Broken Blade, that team was good. And he's somebody that has a pretty good backing for him, but still not your. You could still do better. Hanser, again, I feel bad for him. I think if you could put Hanser on plenty of other teams and make that team jump up another spot. Do I want to get into Golden Glue? Like, do I want to get into Gatekeeper? Golden Glue's the biggest gatekeeper in the LCS. Like, he keeps other players that could be good from moving up. And how many chances can we give a guy just to prove that he cannot perform and be good on stage? It brings into the other arguments of how do we make the LCS better, is we need to figure out a way to weed out these guys that keep getting spots that don't deserve them anymore. Like, they just don't. And yeah, this is, like you said, this is your 10th place team or potentially 9th, depending on how Immortals performs.
So I will first say, just to clarify this, and I feel so bad that I couldn't remember, because I actually really like this guy. Their support last year was Ole.
Oh yeah, and he didn't do well though.
No,
it was a really bad year.
But I mean, honestly, that team was this team has not been very good. So I didn't expect Ole to be able to play very well. Yeah, this team is just all over the place, and I wish Hanser was on a better team. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard. It's hard to say, like, which team you would want to put Hanser on. And personally, I would even say, even though I like it, is like I almost would be like Hanser to TL would be a great move as well. Simply just because, like, Impact and Hanser play similar but yet slightly different styles, that it's like, yeah, like, that could work out really well. But anyway, aside from that, like, I wish Hanser was on a better team. And yeah, when I saw the Keith move to support, I just kind of chuckled and was just like, oh my gosh, like, this team really is just trying to figure out anything. They're just like, hey, can you play this role? Cool. Let's just see it. Let's just see it happen.
Aqua is who they tried for. So they tried to get bad and they just got worse. So
yeah, it's I don't know. I agree in the fact that I think that this could be easily your 10 team, but I do think it's 9. I do think it's 9. We'll see. Maybe this team will surprise us and, like, do fairly well. I don't think they make playoffs at all. Even if well does not mean playoffs. I just think they'll play well, and me and you will come back on this podcast and go, man, they played well, and leave it at that. Like, that'll be what we say. Let's just be like, man, Golden Guardians, they surprised us. They played well. Cool. They were 8th place. Awesome. Let's go on. Move on. Yeah, this is just, oh boy. I I don't know what Golden Guardians are doing. I just don't. I feel like there are so many better options that they could do to make this roster work, and they continue to not be able to do it. I don't know what it is. We'll see. Yeah, that's all I can really say about this team.
The only thing I'll give Golden Guru credit for is he is the only NA resident, like legitimately NA resident, that's starting in the mid lane.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't realize that.
Mid lane, 9 out of 10 is imports. Top lane is 6 out of 10. Jungle's 4 out of 10. Mid is 9 out of 10. Import the ADC is 4 out of 10, and support is 2 out of 10.
What about coaches?
For import.
I'm just kidding.
But I would say congrats Golden Glue for doing that. But the only reason GGS signed you is because everybody wanted GGS GG. Golden Guardians, Golden Glue, Golden Grayson. I mean, everything just fits. It's a marketing thing for Golden Glue.
Oh man, but yeah, no. This team's rough.
Yeah,
and yeah, I didn't realize the number of imports in the mid lane until you pointed it out, because yes, they don't fill import slots yet or anymore, but Jensen and Bjergsen were also both from EU. So yeah, that is the case. Kyle, so as we go to wrap up this show, I just want to ask your final thoughts essentially on overall the moves made and just heading into the rest of the preseason.
I'm definitely looking forward overall to see how some of these teams gel. Again, TL, C9, TSM, CLG. I think those are going to be your main four, their top four that's going to be fighting for the excuse me, the top spot. Only thing I wish I was able to see a little bit more of with the LCS, which is a problem overall that we could talk about another day. We talked about it in our last podcast. It's just not enough rookies are able to make it up to the main stage when we go to talk about the LEC next week. Hopefully, everything will be settled. You see multiple rookies keep getting brought up and performing well on stage. So I just wish I could see a little bit more rookies here and there, especially for some of these guys that we've seen a couple times that just that has not worked out. Hakuo, Golden Glue. There's some guys that we can place with younger talent and up and coming. I feel like just to get things moving to hopefully better NA overall.
150% agree with you, and that was going to be my final thoughts is moves wise. I think some of the moves that were made great, some of the moves that were made were bad, but just overall, and I think I could be wrong with who said this, but I think it was Dominate that said this, which is essentially that so far, besides Cloud9, the LCS Academy has been a joke because none of the guys have gotten many opportunities to play on the main roster or go to a team to play. They just are stuck in the LCS Academy, and that's the sad truth essentially. There has to be some sort of change that goes on with the LCS Academy or the LCS in general to give some of these guys a chance. And on top of it, I will say, which is, I think, another, problem with the LCS Academy is if you do look at some of these rosters, while yes, they have some, names or, people who haven't played on the main rosters yet, you also see quite a bit of names of people who used to be on the main roster that are now down in the LCS Academy. And I don't know if that's just because these teams are just wanting to win the LCS Academy or if they actually have those guys there to help develop those players. It's hard to say, but they need to make a change. LEC makes it work. Why can't we? I'll just simply put it that way. Well, that is all that we have for this episode of The Riff. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure, if you like it, to give the video, or on SoundCloud, a thumbs up, or the heart button, if I remember correctly, on SoundCloud, to show that you guys like what you're doing. Leave us some comments about your thoughts on the show and any things that you guys want to talk about, and we will potentially read some of those on a future episode. And if you really like what you're doing, be sure to subscribe on YouTube to be notified of future videos, because that really helps us out and also helps make sure that we can continue to make these videos for you guys in the future. But as always, thank you again for tuning in, and for the final time in this episode, I'm Jeremy Culver, aka Darsay.
And I'm Gloria, Kairu.
And be sure to continue to tune back every week for the new episodes, so we can continue to bring you the news from the Riff.